International Dairy Week presents Around the Barn. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Treloar, and this will be the online space where those in the Australian dairy industry can connect with each other, as well as those right around the world in the lead up to Australia's premier dairy show in January 2022. This will be the one-stop shop where you can catch up with our sponsors, exhibitors and judges to talk all things cows, technology and showing down under.
Another very special international guest to our Around the Barn podcast. We have none other than Karel Rutten from all the way over in Brussels. Karel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's quite an honor to be on the podcast.
Karel, look, take us through, you're a man that travels the world. What exactly is it that you do for people who don't know you?
Well, what I do is I start traveling the world in '84 when I went for the first time to the United States and worked there as a trainee, but was not a trainee program. I was just building up my network and was traveling from farm to farm, work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks for board, and then I could travel to the next place. So, and that's always what got me a little bit addicted on traveling. So I wanted to explore the world. That was the same when I was going to high school. I was always looking what was further down the street, which was it's an hour away from my place. But then I always wanted to know how the world was looking. So that's how I started traveling in '84. And then, of course, I had to finish my studies up till '88. And then I started working as a classifier for the Holsteins Association in Belgium. Well, it was not that I didn't like it, but it was more like an 8 to 4 job or a 9 to 5 job or something I don't like. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to see what's going on today. I know I'm not going to wait till the next time something comes around. So in '89, I decided to quit the job as a classifier, and I said, "Well, listen, I want to go to the United States because I was still had my contacts in the U.S. since my '84 experience." And then in '89, I went back to World Dairy Expo on my own. And got to know a lot of people, started to broaden up my network. And since '92 up till now, I've missed the World Dairy Expo only 3 times. But as you know, it's always expensive. People ask me, well, you go and see all the farms and there's a possibility that we can come along. So and that's how I started my side business on traveling and taking people with me to different shows. So up till now, I've been in all 4 corners of the world already. So it's always agricultural related because I go to a show or I do management tours and I take them to the best place what I can find, and it's more into the commercial aspect of the business. You take people with you, and something they will never forget because you take them to the best ones, and they always see something or find something out what they can use on their own farm. So that's a little bit in brief what I'm doing in my travel business. But it's not my core business, of course.
Well, on that, Karel, I mean, many of us do travel the world. We do travel to those big cow shows. Have you been able to keep track of how many countries you've been to or how many different cow shows you've been able to see?
Oh, on the cow show thing, I've traveled all over Canada, all over the United States, all over Europe. And then at the end, there are now 4 main shows I like to go to, which is the World Dairy Expo, which is the Royal Winter Fair, which is the International Dairy Week, and which is the Swiss Expo. And then for every 2 years or every 2 or 3 years, there's the European show, which I always will be attending either in Belgium or Switzerland or France or Italy or Germany, wherever. But then I also do go and see all the national shows. So I've been to all European shows so far and all the major events worldwide. So.
Now, you mentioned that you have been to Dairy Week a couple of times. How many people do you think you've been able to bring to Dairy Week when you come out on those trips?
Okay, so for the Dairy Week, it was always on my bucket list. So I decided to go in 2018. It was, I had 10 people with me. Well, they want to see more general farming. So it was International Dairy Week. I was only there for one day, but I really enjoyed the hospitality and the quality. It's on my bucket list. And well, though with the whole COVID situation, of course, it's we couldn't travel. And I don't know if still Australia is still open, so I just checking my flights if I can get something done and come for 2 or 3 days to the International Dairy Week. Because I said it's there are 4 major shows what I like to attend every year, and that's Dairy Week, the Swiss Expo, the Madison, and the Royal Winter Fair.
Many of us traverse the world to try and see some of the greatest cows, at some of those biggest shows, World Dairy Expo, World Winter Fair. Obviously, COVID has put a pause on that, but when all these borders reopen up again, I'm sure we'll be flooding to these shows. Do you have you've done many travel before, you've travelled all over the world to many, many different countries. What are some of your tips or your advice for people looking to travel and trying to find some of those best cows around the world?
Well, if you as many shows as I've seen, and you take the cream of the crop, I mean they could, and I would love to get those together one day. I mean, just fly them all into Doha, Qatar, or something, and organize a show. Probably there's some people, sheiks, they have some money who to invest, but it's. Well, what you see, of course, is the depth of classes in North America that are just phenomenal. But what I saw when I was at the International Dairy Week, your Jersey show is just unbelievable. It is second to none. I've never seen that before. But then the Holsteins show, I mean, all the class winners, I mean, I would love to see them one day all together. I mean, even with the Europeans or with the Swiss or with the North Americans or the Canadians or the Australian ones, I would love to see them one day all together and competing against each other. And I really would like to know what the outcome will be, because you go to the Swiss Expo, for example, and for me it's the best show. The people are so proud. The organization is unbelievable, unreal. The atmosphere is just unreal. And you stand next to the grand champion, and you stand to the grand champion next to the grand champion in Madison. I mean, they are so close together. Or you are standing to the next to the grand champion in Australia. I mean, it's just splitting hairs if you're talking about quality. It's unbelievable.
Karel, I guess your advice from that is for anyone looking to see some of the best cows in the world, try and get to every show, every one of the major shows around the world that you can.
Yes, of course.
Fantastic. Well, Karel, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast and give us some insight into some of your travels and some of your advice. And I think the insight's been interesting in how you say that, each show just has its own depth in terms of quality with cows in various breeds. So we really appreciate your time on the podcast. Thank you.
So, and one more advice that is, if you want to see something of the world, especially in agriculture, just call me.
Great advice indeed. We'll be hitting you up, and I'm sure plenty of Australians will too, especially when they too can travel the world again and visit the likes of Expo and the Winter Fair. So we look forward to that, Karel. Thank you.
Hey, have a good one. Thank you.
So our next guest on the podcast, it forms part of one of Dairy Week's very major sponsors and sponsors for a long time. We have Dave Conheady from Ridley. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Dave, can you take us through what Dairy Week has meant to Ridley over the years?
Okay, so Ridley's involvement now as a major sponsor or partner of Dairy Week has extended into many years, and it's just a way for a company that survives pretty much on the agricultural sector to show some support, both financially and obviously in regards to attendance, to support a very big part of our business and let them know that their business partners are definitely part of the biggest international showing arena in the world. And
look, obviously dairy forms quite a big part of it. As you said, the Ridley Dairy Blends. Take us through that.
There's a few major projects that we've been working on behind the scenes within our business. And look, just a bit of background on Ridley, for those that don't know, we're established in 1987 and publicly listed that year. And then in 1990, we purchased Barra stock feeds. And what we do, we support food producers to the poultry, dairy, fish, pig, cattle, sheep, horse and lifestyle, as well as the pet sectors. And we manufacture approximately 1.7 million tonne of feed and feed ingredients annually across 17 sites Australia-wide. So we're a very big company, but the question about the blends really hones into the support of the dairy sector. And I've been with Ridley in a technical capacity now for 20 years, and our main aim is to support, in particular, the dairy industry with technical service and product support from multiple mills across the state. We've got sites in Gumbau, Pakenham, Maffra, Terang, Tamworth, Taree, and Toowoomba. So the product offering that we have is obviously pelleted feeds, grain mixes, mueslis, and forage blends. And I suppose it leads directly into your question around forage blends. The last drought we had, I think, which is 6 years ago now, we had a positioning in many of our dairy regions where we really couldn't supply enough feed to animals to support lifestyle, reproduction, and pregnancy. So we've got to try and find ways that we can get forages to animals that are outside of natural delivery. And this is where the idea of the blends were, is normally you can find plenty of forages and byproducts and the like that are made up of low characteristics nutritionally. We thought there'd be a way we can manipulate those forages by potentially mixing them and forming a TMR and PMR blend and deliver those cows to get through that particular situation. And obviously, as we know, seasonal conditions come and go and change. And as this has developed, we've been able to move that thought process into more of a manufacture and production-based systems. And it's probably landed us to where we are now. Excuse me.
And Dave, look, what's the benefit been to the cow with this dairy blend for dairy farmers to be able to use on farm?
Well, it's a way to be able to increase the digestibility and the nutrient density of forages that particularly by themselves don't supply that. So, for example, we can use, straw, cereal forages, silages, byproducts. We can mix them together and adapt particle size to better suit, particularly in this case, ruminal animals, to get better rumen function, to stabilise rumen pH, and therefore deliver better results to the supplier. So it's not cutting edge, but it's just something that a stock feed manufacturer in the past hasn't really taken in by the scruff of the neck and ran with. And as they all say, out of crisis and troubled times, you develop strategies around. And this is just something that over the last 6 years has grown into something quite exciting.
Dave, you've got a dairy background yourself. Take us through a bit of that and why you think this kind of product is so beneficial for the future and the progression of adapting to seasonal situations.
Yeah, so a little bit of background from me. I'm fourth generation dairy farmer. I farm with my wife, 3 little kids and my parents. And my passion is the dairy industry. I work in it. I'm in the dairy most days, and I've got a real drive to see the industry move forward. So I'm very lucky with the ability I have to service a lot of clients in Western Victoria, and also help some of our other territory managers and salespeople around the country to focus on animal performance and really start to help farmers with the strategies around what they're optimising, be that profit or particular genetic bacterias that positionings that they want to get to. And yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm born into it. I enjoy it. I live it. I sleep it. And at the moment, when the industry's so profitable, it's really quite satisfying to be able to give impetus to farmers to get to where they want to be. And like I said before, every business has its own goals. And yes, we all like to make money, but it's a way of life for us. And if we can enhance that, have animals that perform better, reduce workload, reduce metabolic disease, I think that we've got some great opportunities going forward.
With the Ridley dairy blends, Dave, are they available right across the country in dairy farming regions?
Yeah, so it's a real growth positioning for Ridley. We at this moment we have a manufacturing site in Terang, which is located in southwest Victoria, and currently we're making the TMR and PMR blends as loose blends that are delivered on a walking floor truck. So the restraints at the moment is just purely getting volume on the back of a truck. Obviously, a mix that's gone through a mixer wagon that's got quite high dry matters. You can't get a lot of volume on the back of a truck. So we're probably prohibited at this stage with where we can go with freight issues. But we're really pleased to announce that our business, the Ridley Corporation, has just ticked the box to put a new project in place where in March 2022 we'll be able to make these blends into bales. So we're going to put them through a compression baler and wrap them and be able to take them basically wherever a truck will go. So yeah, it's a real growth for us, and it's really exciting, and it's really pleasing to be able to share that information with the viewers of the IDW site today.
Well, Dave, it sounds like the demand is there more than ever. Did you expect to see this dairy blend product to be in such high demand with dairy farmers around the country?
Yeah, I think so. The learnings that we take from the nutrition industry, which I'm heavily involved is a lot of the people that we use as influencers have a lot of information, a lot of background in, the fully intensive systems in Europe, in America and these places. And these systems are really heavily dominant in those particular areas. But as we grow our knowledge base around pastures and tropical species that we can grow here in Australia, the ability to incorporate the two systems together gives us great opportunity to manage risk in regard to climatic conditions. And if we have the ability to be able to mix different forages and feed sources together and produce a rationale that can give the grass-based farmer means to be able to feed his animals better without the cost of buying the infrastructure and mixing facilities themselves, and without the need for extra labour, it's really, really exciting. So yeah, I never thought that it would get to where it is now. And the thing is, the world's the oyster for these products, because as these products become available to the wider public, I think the uptake will be quite intense. And I think as long as we analyse the response and constantly looking at the performance, it's a whole new niche market for the Ridley business, but also another avenue for us to be able to do things just that little bit better and try and make it just a little bit easier.
So Dave, look, take us through what exactly is in these dairy blends, and maybe how does it, differ to say maybe other similar products?
So currently, the fact that we're delivering to a lot of facilities that haven't got great storage, we've been very mindful of shelf life of the product. So we're trying to keep the initial blends that we're using in transitional diets and early lactation diets, between 65 and 75% dry matter. So most of the raw materials that we've been using, cereal hays, cereal straws, we've used maize silage, cottonseed, almond hulls. They're probably the main products that we've used in the last 5 to 6 years. But again, as we develop our knowledge and involve, industry partners that have the expertise in some of these areas, a lot of the bioproducts that are available quite regularly, we can be used. So to be fair, the world's a new place for this marketing position. It's a new opportunity for us to look at raw materials that possibly in the past we haven't been able to use. But again, you've got to crawl before you walk, and we wanted to make sure that the product was stable, the shelf life was adequate. We were able to limit the risk factor with moulds, mycotoxins and these sort of things. So we've quite strategically stay with dry blends, but as we're working through different inoculants and preservatives to enable shelf life, things like citrus pulp and mill run and all these other products that we consider secondary feed sources can be used to strategically hit feeds and feeding periods that show stress. And again, I talk in Western Victoria where I'm based and where I farm, and we've had an incredibly wet winter where most of our forages didn't see daylight for 4 to 5 months. So the ability to bring in a high fibre-based feed to slow the rate of passage through a cow when you're eating very wet, very highly nitrogenised grass and using very highly fermentable starch sources has been, again, another benefit to performance, and be that performance on reproductive positioning, production, obviously, and then being able to manipulate these high quality feeds that ferment so quickly in their room and just keep them in there a little bit longer so our microbial population can get full benefit of them. It's been wonderful.
There'll be probably a big chance to present it even more at Dairy Week next year. Obviously, we didn't have Dairy Week last year due to COVID. How beneficial is that going to be for the business to be placed in the heart of dairy farms there in Tatura next year again?
You're talking to a very biased Western Victorian, so we think that Northern Victoria is probably not quite the heart of the dairy industry, but it's a pretty close second. But look, again, I wear two hats. I'm a licensed dairy farmer. I milk cows. I work in the consultancy industry in nutrition. And the one thing that builds performance and relationships is good people. And COVID's put a strain on dairy farmers because the main people they've seen has been the tanker driver and limited service providers. And there's no better way to support the dairy industry than to be front and centre with positionings at International Dairy and the like, and to be able to put a face to the name, not just a badge that's on your shirt. So from our business's point of view, especially the ruminant team, which I've been a part of for a long time, I really enjoyed Dairy Week, not only just for the Ridley support mechanism, but just the relationships with fellow farmers across multiple regions that all do the same thing that we do, and in theory are all trying to find the golden mile to get to that, that profitability factor that we're all so heavily crazy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Dave, for joining us on the podcast. Dave Conheady from Ridley. It's been great to learn about this product that's been developed over the last couple of years, and certainly the story about how it was born out of troubled times in an industry, and now it's utilised as a really beneficial tool is really great. So pleasure to have you on the podcast, and we'll see you in January.
Appreciate it, and can't wait to get back to Tatura and catch up with everyone again. Thank you.
Well, we're very excited to introduce Mark Patullo to the podcast Around the Barn. Mark, welcome to the podcast. Look, take us through a bit of background of your history in the dairy industry in Australia.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. And firstly, I'd like to thank you guys for Around the Barn. It's certainly happy to judge the Ayrshires this coming IDW. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. So the background, I guess, I started back with the Ayrshires. First registered Ayrshires back in the late 70s, I guess. Certainly, family farm. Moved up from Pakenham in Gippsland up into Northern Victoria. Family farm with mum and dad, and plus Tracy, my wife, as well. And then we started the concept there of Walmar Ayrshires. It's certainly a starting background, I guess. We had a mixed herd of Ayrshires and Holsteins and a few crossbreed cows when we first started there in Northern Victoria. So we progressed and started showing a few cows, and I guess the first highlight was winning the yearling heifer class in at Melbourne Show, and that was 81 or 82. I think we won the first. That was our first blue ribbon at Melbourne Show. So we progressed, and obviously we went down that track and using more of the Canadian genetics, not the US genetics. I felt that back then the Canadian genetics were more what we wanted to use, and the fact they were a bit higher type, and so we progressed in using the Canadian genetics. So from there, showed a lot of cows throughout in the 80s, and certainly weren't successful until we got into late 80s and early into the 90s. Probably a lot of people don't know this, but we were one of the first. Well, we were the first people to import an Ayrshire animal out from Canada, and that was back in 1988. So we had partners back then as well that helped us out, and thankfully to Brian Leslie and also Brent Walker in Canada that we brought this heifer from the Royal Winter Fair. She was out of the highest classified Ayrshire cow back then, a cow called East River Daisy's Last. And I think back then she was classified 94 points, and that was probably one of the highest for any Ayrshire animal back then. And she was a cow that won numerous champion cows at Madison and also the Royal Winter Fair. So then we moved into the early 90s, and obviously we started to get pretty competitive by using the genetics that we had by using Canadian genetics. We had our first champion cow in the Ayrshire section at Melbourne Royal, and that was the first calf 3-year-old. And judge back then was David Mayo. So from then on, 95, we went back to Melbourne show again, champion cow, and also she was equal reserve champion dairy cow called White Rose. And then in 97, we showed Dad actually passed away in 97. 97, we showed at Melbourne Royal, and we had champion cow there as well in 97. 98, we decided that we start to disperse our herd of Ayrshires and move into the Holstein world. So in 88, I took a team of Ayrshires to Adelaide Royal, and we took 8 head back then, and had the great help of Ross Easterbrook back then. Certainly helped me out a fair bit. I guess back then at Adelaide Royal was the biggest feature that we had. We had champion cow, also intermediate champion, and junior champion, intermediate champion, also champion cow. I guess the highlight was winning the Pen of 3 cows, all breeds, at Adelaide that year. So we dispersed major reduction sale that year in October, and then we moved into the Holstein and had a few Ayrshires, but not as many as what we had in the past. And then with Ross and I, Ross actually brought a cow from Plana Holsteins, a cow called Plana Broker Selena. So she certainly asked me to go in partnership with her, and we did. And we had a great success with her at Sydney Royal on 2 occasions, and also at the World Conference Show at Sydney, where she was champion cow and also champion dairy cow. So I guess the 90s were very, very good for us in the fact that we're very competitive, and it was very, very rewarding. Then we another partnership with Tiger Farms Syndicate from out Mount Gambier. We brought a cow at Bill Hannell's sale, a cow called Showtime Ding. Anyway, she produced several daughters, a cow called Gibson SG Ding, and she was very successful at Dairy Week in the early 2000s, of winning 2 occasions of intermediate champion. So I guess, and then, obviously with Murray Brook, Holsteins have been very good influence on me over the years. Showed a lot of cows for Murray. He's sort of been an inspiration to me over the years as well.
So, Mark, I mean, you've had quite a decorated career with Ayrshires, certainly, in the 80s and 90s there, and obviously you were able to jump the gun a little on me in announcing that, yes, you are the Ayrshire judge for Dairy Week next year. We're very excited to have you in the ring. What was that like for you to get that phone call to be the judge?
No, certainly very prestige. Getting that phone call, and certainly. I didn't even ring Trace to say that I had the invitation to judge. I just jumped at it straight away to say, yep, I'll accept the invitation straight away. Yeah.
Mark, looking at the Ayrshire breed today, I mean, certainly in recent years, they've really, I guess when you're looking at the World Photographic Competition, Australian animals year after year are dominating a lot of those classes. How have you seen the Australian Ayrshire breed really sort of take on and compete and be some of the best in the world?
Well, they're pretty competitive today, and I think it's the genetics by people using the US genetics and also the Canadian genetics. I think that's where a lot of the Australian Ayrshire breeders are sort of got on board and using that concept of using those on the genetics overseas for sure.
Do you reckon there's any maybe particular challenges with the breed at the moment?
With the breed itself, No, I guess with the Ayrshire breed, because it's a smaller breed, and I guess when you compare that with the Holsteins, you haven't got the genetic pool as what the Holsteins have to the Ayrshire world. So I guess that's part of the reason why the Ayrshires of it, or any coloured breed, I guess, minor coloured breeds haven't got today.
And coming back closer to home, back to Australia and obviously International Dairy Week, which is our major focus. Obviously, you've spent many years at Dairy Week, at the height of its success. And you touched on a little bit with the Ding cow and her success at Dairy Week. But look, what are some of your highlights been at Dairy Week over the years?
I guess I had the opportunity to lead at a lot of the sales early days when they had those sales back in Shepparton at the convention centre there. That was certainly big highlights back then. And then I guess also we brought a cow, down at Gippsland there, and she was actually a reserve champion cow at Dairy Week. So that was early 2000s. So that was pretty impressive as well. I guess by having the showcase that we had back in the early days, and then also had the opportunity to run the IDW sale for worldwide size. Certainly, that was a big highlight over the last 6 years.
And going back to the sales that you sort of were in control of a fair bit over those years, Mark, take us through maybe just some of those highlights in how those sales were able to facilitate some pretty impressive records here in Australia.
Yeah, I guess there was a year there that we had one of the highest TPI heifers there, and it was owned by Declan Patton at the time, and certainly that was probably my biggest highlight. I run the sale to see that price at IDW. Was certainly honoured to be involved and manage the worldwide size sale, and it was incredible night by all.
Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and obviously incredibly exciting to introduce you as our Ayrshire judge for Dairy Week in 2022. We look forward to having you in the centre of the ring, and we'll see you there.
Thank you very much, Lee, and it's great to have this concept around the barn, and appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Around the Barn. We hope you enjoyed hearing from each of our guests. If you like what we're talking about, make sure you hit the share button. That's all we've got time for. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.